Thank you. This September meeting, Rutherford County Historical Society now comes to order. First order of business that I'm going to say is we now have Susan Daniels' new book, and it's at the Historical Society. We have had to go up on the price on it because the cost of printing went up, so we can't sell it at a discount. The price is $50. And we've already sold, I think, 4 or 5 of them out of the ones that you've ordered, so.
We only ordered 15.
I know you did, and of course they were members, the ones that bought them, because they're excited about it.
This is the period of time between the two census. You know, the 1890 census was literally destroyed by fire. So you have the 1880 census and you have the 1900 census. So there's a 20-year gap. If you're looking for a woman who was born in 81 and married in 99, 99, you're up a creek without a paddle because, you know, and so that's why this book is important, because it shows family relationships in the estates that got settled during that time. There's a copy of it here, I think. I'm pretty sure that.
Yeah, this is Vicky's copy, Vicky Norton's copy. Okay.
What's the title?
The first order, Rutherford County, Tennessee Deaths and Estate Settlements, volume number 6. Who are our guests tonight, other than members? Any guests tonight?
I brought a guest.
One of my classmates, and Sandra brought a guest. Thank you. With the next order of business, I'm going to, before we start our program is Pettis, give me a break, I'm tired. That's my bedtime. Pettis Reed has some business to go over, please.
I can handle any kind of process you want to. Right, as chairman of the nominating committee, I would like to go give you the report of the nominating committee. The nominating committee recommends that all 4 current officers be re-elected for a 2nd-year term. President Walter White, Vice President Johnny Leonard, Secretary Bonnie Black, and Treasurer Sandra Campbell. We're nominating Curtis Parrish to fill the expired term of Vicki Norton. This term will be for 4 years. Please, Curtis is right back here. And other members' remaining terms are Toby Francis, the guy with the very good looking socks up here. And then Jeff Adcock. Toby has 2 more years, Jeff has 1 year. Bobby Thurman has asked to leave the board, and there's 2 more years left in his term. And Carol Hughes, who is a new member, will serve out the remainder of Bobby's term. Now, Carol is back here. Pettis Reed and Eddie Spohn were appointed by President White to serve at the will of the President. Publication Chairperson, Carol White over here. And Greg Tucker, County Historian. And this is the report of the nominating committee. Now, we'll be putting this out on the card that you'll receive for the next meeting, so you can look at those. If there's someone in here, or you would like to make another nomination or something to make a change in this, these will be voted upon at the next meeting. It's always voted on at the October meeting. Okay, I'm supposed to now introduce our program chairman, best dressed city councilman in Murfreesboro.
At the will of the president here. Whatever he says, I guess I do.
I changed my name from Walter to Will.
Thank you all so much for being here tonight. It's always a pleasure when you come in and get to be around friends and learn about history. I was fortunate enough this afternoon to go and hear former Vice President Alvor speak out at the university, and he did an excellent job speaking. And he did kind of wander off at one point there, and he in his presentation of talking about his father, he started talking about global warming, which I thought was kind of opportunist when it was 100 degrees outside. But And I am doing my best right now to scramble because I lost my page that Diane West had posted today, which was the 20 seasons
Oh,
of,
yeah,
the 20
summer.
seasons of,
Yeah,
of weather in Tennessee, and,
Yeah.
and basically it's a whole lot of summers and about 5 winters, and, we've got a lot of seasons other than mosquito season and hunting season. And, I'm fortunate to be here tonight. Thank you for letting me continue to serve, if you do, at the will of the president. But, I know Toby got a lot of credit for his socks tonight, and before I left home, I thought I would pick out some socks as well. And the problem is like, with me, I usually, when I was a kid growing up, I just wore what Mama put on the foot of the bed. And my wife had figured out that that's kind of how I dressed before I left home, was I would just get whatever was on the foot of the bed, put it on, and I'd go to where I was supposed to be. And so tonight, she wasn't gonna be there, and so I decided that it was my night to pick out my outfit. And very much like Toby was my teacher in school, and I followed in his greatness. But I'm dressed, and my son decides he's gonna check out my attire. And so he looks at he said, what kind of socks you got on? So I pulled them up a little bit, and he said, well, they match your shoestrings, so I guess that's okay. And I pulled them up a little more, and he said, well, they match your tie, and I guess that's okay. And I pulled him up a little more, and he said, well, the blue matches your suit, and I guess that's okay. But he said, what's the red for? And I said, I'm gonna sit between Frank and Roy tonight, and that'll match their necks. So without further ado, before I get in trouble, I'm gonna let Sandra come up and introduce our guest speaker tonight. And again, thank you all so much for coming.
Right, thank you for that introduction. Okay, so I want to tell you how I got this program tonight. I went to the Chamber of Commerce for some event, and in the corner they had the glass case with this clock that was chiming every hour, and I thought, now who did that clock? Who put that together? So I asked, and the docent there said, oh, that's Sylvester Chambers. I said, well, is he around? Yep. So she gave him my number, and he called me. First mistake, he called me. So that's how I met your speaker tonight, Sylvester Chambers. He's a member of the National Association of Watch and Clock Collectors since 1985. He has a broad range of experience building and repairing mechanical clocks, especially antique clocks. And he's been repairing clocks for over 40 years. When he can't find a part, he makes it. And you'll see that in his presentation, I'm sure. He also has experience in moving grandfather clocks from their previous location to their new home and setting them up. He worked at Avco for 37 years, building and repairing clocks in his spare time. During that period, he was fortunate enough to have a trip to Germany with the Hermle Clock Company, and he got to spend 2 weeks there in Germany with his wife. In 1983, Sylvester was asked to build 6 grandfather clocks for the city of Smyrna, which were shipped to the city of Kanda, Japan. And as you know, is that the sister city, the Smyrna sister city. And he's also been involved in repairing tower clocks throughout Middle Tennessee and Kentucky. Well, how did he come to repair the Murfreesboro, the old clock in the Murfreesboro Tower? In 1999, he got a call, and there was a piece of clock laying over there at the courthouse. And come and get it if you want it. So one thing led to another, and he and a small group of people decided they would repair the clock at no charge. The effort involved custom work from other clock experts around the country, whose work was paid for by several anonymous donors at the expense of $12,000. Restoration took 8 years, from 1999 to 2007, and the clock is now located in the Chamber of Commerce. So please welcome Sylvester Chambers to our meeting.
Yeah.
hear me in the back, I don't think
I
it's.
don't think it's on. There we go.
Is that better? Still on. That good? Okay. My pleasure. It's the third presentation I've done in the last 2 months. The old clock likes to talk. And I won't be talking tonight. The old clock will be talking. So if you get a little teary-eyed, go ahead and wipe your eyes. Because this clock has been through, excuse the language, hell and back. But it's back running, and that's what we're striving for now. I'll be filling in for the Stone and Marshall clock, Mr. Stone. My life, you got to number 2. Got some light, there you go.
Eddie touches the microphone thing and the lights go out.
Anyway, we can start here a minute. My life is not always like this picture. I was born in 1859 at Stone and Marshall Clock Company in Casanova, New York. You see, I was one of approximately 75 clocks of this model. I was the lucky one to be purchased by Rutherford County in the year 1859. I sat atop the Rutherford County Courthouse, which was completed in 1859, and observed the Civil War, then watched the changes that come during World War I and World War II. I loved my new home and felt secure there. But the Civil War changed everything. In 1862, the Union Army set up camp in the courthouse steps in Colonel Manny's lawn along the banks of the Stone River. They also took over the jail. On July the 10th, 1862, I saw Confederate General Nathan Bedford Force approaching with his men. And while the Northern slept, he entered Murfreesboro. The clatter of horses' hooves sound like a storm. They liberated the jail, which had been filled with Confederate troops, and tied up the Northern troops who were scattered about the town. The final showdown took place around the courthouse home. I live to tell the tale. Luckily for the courthouse and me, Forrest's men had no artillery. Instead, they axed down the big wood doors and built entry bars to smoke out the Union soldiers who were holed up on the second floor. I was terrified that the fire would burn my home to the ground, but the soldiers finally surrendered by the evening of July the 13th. All the Union forces had surrendered, and I was safe again. The Civil War was still raging at the end of the year. In December of the same year, General Rose launched an offensive on General Bragg's army of Tennessee right around the Stone River. I could barely see for the rain, fog, smoke from the cannons fired, eclipse and scene occurred in the distance. I could hear it, though. Horses whinnying, men yelling, screaming, artillery and muskets fired last from morning until night on the 31st. The Confederate drove Union line back to the Nashville Pike by 10 o'clock a.m., but it held. Union reinforcements arrived late in the morning to reinforce the stand and become fighting atop stopped. That day, Federals established a new strong line. Several days of shuffling and skirmishing followed. On the afternoon of the 2nd, Bragg trusted troops at a Union division that had previously crossed the Stone River and take up the strong position on the bluff east of the river. The Confederate drove back the Federals back across McFadden Ford, but with the assistance of artillery, the Federals fended off the attack and forced the rebels to return to their original position. Bragg left the field on January 4th and 5th, 1863, withdrew to Shelbyville and Tullahoma, Tennessee. Rosecrans did not pursue, but as the Confederate retired, he claimed the victory. Went to fight the Battle of Nashville. The other American units were stationed at Fort Rosen. I'm sorry, I just and at the end of the war, the soldiers marched through town, shocking white Southerners while delivering an unmistakable message of Union victory. I watched earthwork that made up forces deterioration over the years from my home in the clock tower. I wondered if they are still there. After the Civil War, the landscape of Murfreesboro changed. Slowly at first, growth became more rapid. After a while, I could barely recognize the old town for what she once was. See, after the Civil War ended, the economy changed, slavery ended, and the farmers had to produce different crops to survive. Many men lost their fortune in the war, but it was nice to look down and see progress. Former slaves were now free to live, work as they pleased. But life was still not easy. Men started growing more food and cash crops, and I could see hefty animals dotting the countryside, increase in numbers. Cattle, they were called. Men began to prosper again when the cattle multiplied. 1911, the year I turned 52, the Middle Tennessee State Normal School was built. I could see it when I looked to the east. Tennessee teacher standards were higher than they had ever had been, and the teachers needed a place to learn the craft. Murfreesboro became a center of learning. I saw the college undergo many changes over the years, but it always remained a magnet or eager-minded. In 1913, the cyclone hit the square in Murfreesboro, destroying many of the buildings. I thought I was hearing a train, but the sound became too close. In reality, it was a twister cloud that threatened my home and my existence. The cyclone barely missed hitting the courthouse. For the second time in my life, I normally escaped destruction. Agriculture and education were not the only source of income for the citizens of Rutherford County. Industrial came to town. A few years before I was born, in the form of the old cedar bucket factory, the next major industrial development for Murfreesboro occurred in 1913. The Rutherford County Incorporated Creamery was a product of the successful dairy industry in the area. The agricultural economy thrived in Rutherford County until after World War I. But in the 1920s, farmers suffered from inflated prices. In 1930, the economy went busted, and many farmers who were already struggling lost everything. People call this the Great Depression. I considered the people of Rutherford County my friends and neighbors, They never knew I watched over them, but it pained me greatly to watch them suffer. Unfortunately, World War II was the economic recovery, so many young men and boys left serving their country. Young men were also arriving in Rutherford County at this time. The federal government decided to put a flight training school in Smyrna. I could not see the school, but I heard the talk and saw the plane buzzing through the air. The school closed for a time, and last I heard it was reopened as Stewart Air Base in Smyrna. Manufacturing facility came and went. After World War II, industry replaced farming as the economical base for the county. The most exciting event in my life in the clock tower were the Civil War and the cyclone of 1913. Today, life was nice too. I watched children grow into adults, even saw some pass from this world. I heard about the event of the town, the state, and the world from the voices floating up from the street below. People praying and wishes touched me on the way up too. I could see all the churches in town. I heard their memories singing on Sunday morning. My life was good in my old home. I long to be with the people of my town again and to see how the economy changed. Fortunately, at that time, Mr. Oshel Russell of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, New York, near the town of Casanova, New York, where I was born in the stone marshal factory in 1859, came to the rescue. Russell had access to my twin sister in a local museum, and she provided much needed technical information about me. He put Mr. Chambers in touch with Mr. Chuck Roser, the longtime tire clock part maker in Lockport, New York. Chuck reproduced several of the missing parts for my time module. Both Russ and Chuck are members of the NAWCC Clock Tower chapter. Meanwhile, I could feel Mr. Chambers sandblasting, scraping rust and dirt off my old metal parts and smell a new paint. 14 feet. Oh, wow. In August 2001, Mr. Chambers told me that all the new parts for my module had arrived. I could hear him assembling my frame back together. A month later, the big day came. 16. Opened my eyes and I looked through the black and white 12-inch face and 10-inch hands that I got in exchange for the 7-foot dials which still serve their purpose at the courthouse. I could see my beautiful and shiny brass gears mounted in my once old, dirty, and broken frame was now a lovely green color just as I remember them from earlier years. I could see the 67-inch pendulum rod with a 40-pound cast brass pendulum bob swinging left to right. Each time it swung, I heard my heart tick-tock, tick-tock. I was astounded. I was placed in a display in Rutherford County Courthouse for a few weeks. 17. Mr. Herschel Mullins, who for a great many years had owned Mullins Jewelry Store across the square, came to see me. He could hardly believe it was really me. The worn clocks to which he once made minor repairs, he used to wind the 125-foot steel cable that ran down through the walls of the courthouse to the basement. Every time I was wound, I had power for about a week. Mr. Chambers came back to me and said the committee had met again, and County Mayor Nancy Allen approved transporting me back to his shop to make the final repairs on the striking module, to make me complete again. Upon examining my striking module, Mr. Chambers discovered several more missing parts. The work began. It was decided that the work could be done in the local machine shop. I could see Terry Gregory from U-92 die in Laverne, making a gear with an EDM machine. Josh Taylor machining another gear in Upton, Kentucky. Meanwhile, Murfreesboro 2 and engineering was doing machining work on my frame. Roy Lynch, also a member of Chapter 16 in AWCC, turning a wooden drum which accommodated the 3/8-inch steel cable that supported the weights. Stephen White fabricated beautiful design stand to support all my working parts. Finally, all these parts came together in Mr. Chambers' shop, making me whole again. I had beautiful shining gears and steel wheels mounted in a nice green frame, same color as my body. One day, 3 young men, Darrell Tadgett, Charles Bain, and Justin Chambers, stood around watching Mr. Chambers work. Since I weighed about 300 pounds, Mr. Chambers asked young men to help put me on the stand. 18.
That far,
I think we ought to sink on it. We forget about the picture, but we're not to sink on it. I noticed a couple more things were still missing. I did not have any weights to give me power. Larry Thomas, who is a member of NAWCC, had just what I needed. He had 200-pound weights to replace the missing 250-pound time weight and the 450-pound striking weight, which is a metal container filled with gravel. I wondered who I could count on to wind my weights so I would have power to operate. Mr. Chambers said he had 3 people to help us. Mr. James Cook, Bud Braden, and from Motion Industries in Murfreesboro supplied us with all the necessary parts to give me a personal automatic rewind system. Mark Chambers of Chambers Electric in Smyrna, see what 19 is. That's it. Completed the necessary electric work. 20. I'm so proud in the video. Did you get the video? I'm so proud I can display time again and ring the little 6-inch bell which I received in exchange for the large brass bell that is still being used today in the top of the Rutherford County Courthouse. Oh, look at me now, sitting in a beautiful black iron stand with all my shiny parts, and I have 2 brass colored weights hanging beneath my body. They extended down through A22. Back up. There you go. Extended down through a board and touching the limit switch on the bottom, the automatic rewind system, causing the weights to rise. And
Just click in the middle of it.
We got that a little bit sideways.
Oh, you do.
Anyway, they extended through a walnut board and touching the limit switch on my rewind system, causing the weights to rise and touch a limit switch controlled at the top, just under my leg, so I can run. I'm fully self-contained. All I need is someone to give me a little drop of oil now and then, as I sit here with a gleam on my face, continued time. I wonder where I will spend the next chapter of my life. I hope that I'm displayed in the lobby of Rutherford County Courthouse or in the Children's Discovery House, where I can hear my original bell ring at 12 o'clock noon and watch the smiles of the present and the future generation as they pass by. I am now located in the lobby of the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce on Medical Parkway in Murfreesboro, where I greet people from all over the United States with a little ding on my little brass bell. Now, got any questions?
Are there any plans to bring it home to the courthouse?
I've heard plans, I don't know, but, before, I'm the only committeeman that's left, the rest of them done passed. We wanted, our suggestion was it stay at the Chamber of Commerce. For a simple reason, more people will see it, more people will be interested in it. And for instance, the big clock down at Vanderbilt, they decided to put it down in their basement with the museum. And it's down there now, but it's dust on it, and don't run, nobody sees it, it's just a piece of metal. And the reason we couldn't put it back in the courthouse, one of our leaders, after they redone the courthouse sometime back, one of our leaders was all for it when we was working on it. But after we got it done, they didn't want, the word was, they didn't want that piece of scrap iron in the courthouse. That's when we had to go find Chamber of Commerce, or not the Chamber, the Children's Discovery House. And then they run out of room, then we had to find another place, and Chamber of Commerce gladly accepted, put it down there.
Well, I think you and the other people should certainly be commended for your efforts in restoring that.
Well, it took a long time, and there was no charge to the county, $12,000. Money was made up amongst the committee, had two major donors, and we were well pleased the way it went. Seemed like everybody just waited to volunteer to do some work on it.
Sir, would you explain the fan again? The blades that spin?
Okay. The fan is on the striking module. There's
Okay.
two pieces there. The fan controls the speed that the bell rings. You can turn the fan to in a certain direction. If it's got more wind resistance, it'll go
Okay.
slower. If you can really make it ding dong, it turns to straight wind.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
It's just the same as any of these clocks or
Right.
any of these other.
That's why it's called a governor fan. All right,
Right.
thank you. Thanks for the explanation.
So what's in the courthouse right now? Up in the
It's
complex?
it's an electric clock.
It's an
like
electric
this.
clock.
But they told me, now, I don't know if never been up there since they done it. They wanted me to help, but I didn't know electricity. And they told me to ring the bell, the regional bell at 12 o'clock noon. But it's just a little, it's not.
Yes, sir.
A lot of the courthouses is going to that. And what got me into this, a lot of people drive around these old town courthouses, they don't know what's upstairs. And they're disappearing fast.
they rang that bell, the original bell, on April the 9th, to commemorate the day the Civil War ended. I was there at the courthouse, Jim Lewis,
I wasn't there.
from the National Park Service, but
In
they.
1865.
Oh, that hurt. That really hurt.
You look good though, Walt.
Yes, you preserve well, Shirley.
It was the 150th anniversary of the day of the surrender at Appomattox. And the courthouse bell rang here in Murfreesboro, you know, to commemorate that the war was over. And Jim Lewis
I
and some
think,
other
I
people.
think when they're making it ring there, somebody up there with a hammer. Yeah, I don't think it was, see, all that's programmed in.
I don't know who was up there, I don't know, I just know that it wasn't me.
When did that clock come out of the courthouse and when did the current one go in? Same time, or do you know about what year?
1950.
Okay, thank you.
Sylvester, wasn't there a, Mr. Chambers, I'm sorry, wasn't there a time period that, the clock did not work?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
It didn't work from 50, I believe it was 58 until we got it going.
Wow.
They had a lot of stuff that somebody tried to do, but all they do if it stopped, this 450-pound bucket I was talking about, they take a shovel, put another shovel full of gravel in it, get it more higher. It was just wore out.
So you're just sitting on 5 o'clock, and it's 5 o'clock somewhere in.
Yeah.
When I was a teenager, would have been around 1979, 80, 81, somewhere along in there. I mowed a yard on Church Street. There's a business there now. It was the first house past where Kentucky Fried Chicken used to be. It was up on that hill, and there was like a little bitty pathway that looked off in kind of a ravine. There were windows in the basement. And this lady that I was working for asked me to take some old jars and bottles and stuff out of that basement one day. And I went down there, and over her late husband's workbench, there were 2 big clock hands in that window, and they were courthouse clock hands.
I wish I'd known about that.
I wish that I knew where they were, because he worked at the courthouse for years, and he took them home. And they were in that window, and they were like 10 till 2 and pointing 2 that way. They were just leaned in the window like that in a V.
Yeah. Well,
And she said, they came off the courthouse.
We ran an ad in the paper for 2 or 3 weeks, asking people if they had anything, but we didn't have no results. Then that's when we started digging into the Stone and Marshall factory type thing in New York.
Sylvester, was the sister clock that you got parts from, was it scrapped then? That was
No, we did not get parts from it. It's still running.
Oh, okay.
We got the dimensions to make our parts.
Oh, you
See,
use
we
it for,
didn't know what
for
it
a
took or
pattern.
anything.
use it for a pattern?
Right.
Okay.
That's cool.
And then the weights that you use, you mentioned somebody had 2 100-pound weights. What do they use for besides clock weights?
This is steel. We went and bought the steel.
Okay, and then they were,
Painted brass. They're 100 pounds. That's what the spec that we got out of the Casanova, New York Museum suggested use 100-pound weight. Anything more than that, you're just putting more pressure on the gears and wearing.
and then they were painted to look like they were brass.
Right.
That's beautiful.
What was the name of the company in Casanova in New York?
Stone Marshall Clock.
Stone Marshall?
Stone and Marshall
Stone
Clock
Marshall.
Manufacturing Company, Casanova, New York.
In the original cost of the clock in 1859.
The best we could tell is right at $200. But see, this is unusual. This part here is a striking line. The clock will run without that. And what would happen if the crops come in, the tax come in, they would add this part. But when you just buy the clock, they just buy this part of it here. But Rutherford County bought it all in one. They didn't have a good year that year.
Did the company send someone to install it? Or a local
You mean on the original?
Yeah.
We never could find that.
assembly?
I'm assuming they did, but we never could find it.
Sylvester's got some materials here, some clock materials and business cards and some other clocks you can look at if you have more questions.
Yeah, the one on the far end over there, that's a number 2 railroad regulator. I made 70 of them. The one next to it, it's a fairly valuable clock. It's a German. One, the little black one laying there, it's mother of pearl. It's pretty good price range. That's just 2 out of my collection, or 3. And I brought these books here. If you got a clock at home and you know what the make of it is, you can pretty well find it in these books and get some information on it.
What's your favorite clock? Have you got a favorite?
Right now, none of it.
One that runs.
One that runs.
Well, I enjoy working with them, but basically all of them has got the same movements in them. But once you get on it, it's basically.
Clock's a clock, okay.
I don't think you like cuckoo clocks.
Any repairman likes a cuckoo clock, something wrong with it.
He's cuckoo.
Stay away from the anniversary
Frank.
clock.
Frank, he's cuckoo, right?
Oh,
that was
we
great.
got a thing that the county gave us, the whole committee laying there when we completed the clock, got it going.
Nice, that's very nice.
And these cards laying there, if you need a card or anything, feel free to take them. Been my pleasure to read this off to
that's
you.
good.
Been looking forward to it. Like I say, this is the 3rd one I've done in the last couple months. And I got 2 more to do. One this month, and one next month.
Good.
Enjoy.
Very nice. Thank you, sir, that was nice.
Mr. Chambers, we appreciate you being here tonight. I just want to remind everybody before you leave that tomorrow, the 17th, is Constitution Day. So be sure and get out to one of the readings if you can and enjoy some education about our Constitution. And has anybody else got anything to say tonight for the good of the Rutherford County Historical Society? Frank?
What is our next program?
Our next program, I've got 2 people that are kind of in between, so it will either be a history of probably housing in Murfreesboro, affordable housing in Murfreesboro, which I know close to the Ransom School over there, we've currently got a project that's about to go in place that is going to change the look of the downtown area quite a bit. And so we're kind of working on them, trying to get them on a schedule that will work for us. And if that does not work out, then we're talking to Bart Gordon's behind the scenes guy when he was in Washington, and Kent Seiler, most of y'all probably know him. And I'm working on him, trying to get him to come and give us some education on what goes on behind the scenes. So I think both of those will be very good, and I'm not sure which will be which, and the other one will probably be at the first of the year, whichever one doesn't work out. So, and then we've got the dinner coming up, and that's in what?
The 9th, I think.
Is that November?
Yes. When is it, John? Is it
Yeah.
November the 9th.
The 9th at the carriage house.
At the carriage house. So, and when will reservations start going in for that? When will reservations start going in?
Soon.
Soon.
We're still working on the menu.
Okay.
Yeah,
And,
wait, not the menu.
and they're working on a speaker and a menu, and they're not giving out any information yet. It's gonna be a secret. But it'll be good. Thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate you being here. Be safe on the way home. God bless you. Thank you.